In this brief video, I'm going to guide you through the study guide for Geni L A2 Einheit 1. As you know at this point, in the workbook, at the end of every chapter, there's a section labeled Das finde ich in Einheit 1. And these are the things that you've learned throughout the chapter. Hence it says, I find this in Unit 1. And usually the learning targets or the general learning goals are numbered. In this case, there are 4 of them. The first being die Personalpronomen im Dativ sind neu. The second one being Verben mit Dativ. The third being Nebensätze mit das. Oops. Dependent clauses with das. And then finally, berichten mit das, setzen, indirekte Rede, indirect speech with das sentences. So, let's tackle the first one. Die Personalpronomen im Dativ sind neu. At this point, you know there are other videos you can watch that explain this. You have your notes. You have the handouts from class. But what do we do with this actual study guide? So let's take a look at what's presented to us. We have Nominativ, Akkusativ, and then we see that Dativ is presented in darker text. That is to imply that that is the new material that we have learned. Now, the first thing to go about doing when you're reviewing is to write things out. So this time I want you to pause the video and to completely copy out those 3 columns. Nominativ, ich, du, er, es, sie, wir, ihr, sie, and sie. Akkusativ, mich, dich, ihn, es, sie, uns, euch, sie, und sie. And finally, Dativ, mir, dir, ihm, ihr, uns, euch, ihnen, ihnen. So take a moment and copy those down. I'll wait while you do it. Okay, now that you've copied those down, the next step to learning them is to review them, to understand that when you see Mia, you immediately know we're talking about the dative case. You might have noticed that there are some that don't change between the accusative and the dative. If you notice that they are largely in the first person plural and second person plural, you would be correct. Uns and euch do not change. Otherwise, everything else has relatively changes. One thing you might have noticed is that in the comparison to English, such as Mia and to me, and ihm as him and ia as her, are relatively similar, and to say nothing of uns and us. You may find that useful in remembering it. Verben mit Dativ. Diese Verben mit Dativ kennst du schon. You already know these verbs with the dative case. Antworten, to answer. Erklären, to explain or clarify. Erzählen, to retell or say. Geben, to give. Gefallen, to be pleasing to like. And an important note about that one, with the verb gefallen, the subject of the sentence is the thing that is liked. For example, I really like David Bowie, so I would write David Bowie gefällt mir, which in other words means David Bowie's music is pleasing to me. Maybe you're a really big fan of coffee. You would not write Ich gefalle Kaffee. No, absolutely not. Wrong. You would write Kaffee gefällt mir. Now let's say you're talking about a group of things that you like. Maybe you really like fountain pens, like Herr Boyd. So I would write Füller gefallen mir. And we have the plural form of gefallen lined up with the plural form of fountain pen. Then we have gehören, which means to belong to. Again, the subject of the sentence is the thing that is doing belonging. For example, if someone loses their backpack, the subject of the sentence, of the person saying, oh, that's my backpack, would be Die Schultasche gehört mir. The school bag belongs to me. Then we have helfen, to help, passen, to fit, schenken, to give as a gift, schmecken, to taste, and schreiben. Schmecken is an interesting verb because if you were to say to someone, das schmeckt, while you're eating, that means, oh, this is delicious. But if you say, das schmeckt mir gut, that says that is delicious to me. There's a slight difference. So you could say, Pizza schmeckt mir sehr gut. You might say, steaks schmecken mir besser. Maybe you really like ice cream, so you would say, und Eis schmeckt mir am besten. And then finally we have the verb schreiben, which is not always dative, but often can be. For example, I'm going to write you a letter. Ich schreibe dir einen Brief. Ich schreibe euch eine E-Mail. Sie schreiben uns einen Brief. They are writing us a letter. So again, a good way to practice those is to come up with sample sentences for each of those. At this time, I'm going to put one sample sentence in the notes here so that you can use that to create others. Ich antworte dir. I answer you. Herr Boyd erklärt den Schülern die Grammatik. Herr Boyd explains grammar to the students. Herr Boyd erzählt eine Geschichte. Herr Boyd is telling a story. You might also write, ich erzähle dir später. I will tell you later. The verb geben. Ich gebe dir einen Füller. I will give you a fountain pen. Das T-Shirt gefällt mir. The T-Shirt, I like the T-Shirt. Der Geldbeutel gehört mir. The wallet belongs to me. Herr Boyd hilft uns bei den Hausaufgaben. Hilfst du mir? Will you help me? Passen. Die Jeans passt dir gut. Das Hemd passt ihm gut. The shirt fits him well. Ich schenke dir den Kaffee. I'll give you coffee as a gift. Schmecken we've covered, and schreiben, let's say she writes him a letter. Sie schreibt ihm einen Brief. Remember, you can pause this video at any time to review and look over the stuff we've talked about. So returning to our learning targets, we're now on number 3. Nebensätze mit das, dependent clauses with das. Again, a pretty simple concept. If you're quoting Peter, you would say, Peter, colon, die Schule macht Spaß, saying verbatim what he said. If you want to restate what he has said, you would write, Peter sagt, dass die Schule Spaß macht. Peter says that school is fun. He's crazy, right? Haha, just kidding. So, we have a quote versus restating what someone has said. Let's say, for example, that Sarah says, Ich mag Rap nicht. So that's a direct quote. You can put quotes around it. So, if we want to restate what she says, Sarah sagt, dass ihr Rap nicht gefällt. Sarah sagt, dass sie Rap nicht mag. Both of those are acceptable restatings of that. And you'll note that in each case, the verb is at the end of the phrase. We'll take another one. Herr Boyd lernt die Vokabeln. Like a broken record, right? Lernt die Vokabeln. So you would write, Herr Boyd sagt, dass wir die Vokabeln lernen müssen. Boyd says that we must learn the vocab. And finally, berichten mit das Sätzen, indirekte Rede, indirect speech with das sentences. So, sagt, dass Sport sein Lieblingsfach ist. He says that sports is his favorite subject. Sie meint, dass der Lehrer zu viele Hausaufgaben geben. She thinks that teachers give too much homework. Sie glauben, dass morgen die Sonne scheint. She believes that the sun will shine tomorrow. Heard that before. Mein Vater behauptet, dass in die Schule immer super war. My father claims that he was always really good in school. So you see, by introducing this das phrase, you're reporting what other people have said. This is called indirect speech. Again, the best way to study this is to simply write out these phrases and observe what happens with the verb. You will often, on the test, you may have a sentence that says something like this. Mein Vater war sehr gut in der Schule. And you'll be expected to turn it into indirect speech in which you would say, Mein Vater sagt, dass gut in der Schule war. Transforming that sentence into that one. So this has been a brief summary of your study guide for the Einheit 1 test coming up tomorrow. Obviously, if you watch this video on a day that is other than tomorrow,